Hello, couples, and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where you get non-boring, modern relationship advice for you to communicate like pros, fight smarter, resolve conflicts faster, and ultimately be a team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman.
And where do we get these topics that we're going to talk about? Well, we get them from you, the listeners. We actually now have you write in, meaning Instagram DM or Facebook message, or literally any way you can get the message to us for what you're either going through, what you want to know more about, where you want to grow. And that is the same for this episode, right? So what are we talking about today?
Well, we put up 3 options because we received a lot of DMs from you all. So the 3 options were how to rebuild trust, how to resolve conflicts faster, and then this third one, which was the winner,
Yay!
Which is if you have differences in your personalities, how to have both your needs met. Now, if you're like, oh man, my topic wasn't the winner, don't worry, we're going to cover the other 2 in the upcoming weeks. But this actually came from a DM on IG from Heather. And she said, I'll just read her message. My partner and I realized a key difference in the way we both operate. I have a need for spontaneity and often throw ideas out and expect him to roll with it. He has a need, however, to think things through and plan things out well in advance. How can we both be sensitive to each other's needs while still feeling our own needs are met? What a good question, right?
I resonate with that, Heather, yeah.
Well, before we even get into some of the advice we'd give them, I think let's give the audience a little sneak peek, a little more into our relationship and talk about, do you think we have differences in our personalities?
Yeah. And I think what we're going to talk about is there's many ways to look at it, but just examples I could see, when we got together, I'm very, you're organized and clean, but I think I go to another level of organization. And that might look like, when clothes get put away and where and how long things get left like in the washer dryer or the dishes being in the sink. I mean, for me, it's not even about cleanliness, but a certain level of organization keeps things clean. I like things to be like parallel and like perpendicular to like corners on the counter. You guys,
literally his sock drawer. Like his sock drawer is so organized and orderly, which I am inspired by. Mine looks like a bomb went off in it. And what's interesting about that, this is almost a sneak peek, but we don't do laundry together. You do yours and you do it the way you want to, because I could never fulfill on your expectations of laundry, and then vice versa for me. So that's one example. Another one, maybe people have caught on to this by listening to us or not, but I'm very fast paced and my brain can think about 3 things at once. And I want to just by 9 a.m. have done all these things. And you're very much more thoughtful and you really take the time to think through things. And in the beginning of our relationship, especially when we started a business together, I was like, come on. And that was a little bit of a point of tension, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is a good point to bring this up, I think. There was some point early in your relationship that the differences that you had in your personality types or the traits you saw as different in them, you were attracted to. Yeah. Apart because they weren't a part of your personality set. So that's what attracts you to that person. But then, I don't know what the trigger is yet, but at some point in your relationship, those same things become challenges. They become tension. And I was drawn to you because of how decisive and how fast you were in taking action. So again, I'm attracted to you from that aspect. And then we do get into business, and a few years later, I'm like, don't rush my process. You're like, come on, we got to get going. I'm like, it's 8:30 and I want to like set my intentions for the day, think through things. And this goes more into the personalities, colors that we're going to go into as well. But that was one of the main things, was attracted to you for how fast you moved and the action you took, no fear almost.
Right.
And then when it got to the point of like, oh, this is key, I think. When it felt like you were trying to get me to be like you,
right.
I think that might be the point when it switches to be attention.
Or vice versa. I'm not like this only one in the relationship that's resisted each other's style, right? Like there is this point. Yeah, it's funny how people say opposites attract. And perhaps there's some truth to that. We for sure know some couples that they're not opposites. They're very, very similar. So I don't think that's one of those things that applies to all. But there is something to say that we are attracted to someone who maybe brings balance to us or harmony. But you're right. There does become this point where it's like, ooh, I'm now frustrated by the difference. And to give you some examples, we received messages from
By the
people.
way, everyone that's listening, this was the most extraordinary week.
Yeah.
For those of you that are new listeners, we pretty much just the last month have switched to like actually getting the questions from the community and doing the subjects and the topics on those. And we don't have guests anymore because we just take that topic as deep as we can.
Yep.
And this has been fun for us for sure.
So fun, yeah.
But thank you so much. This week we had more engagement. We had more questions, more answers to polls, more people reaching out than literally ever before.
Yeah.
So thank you all for just going into this. This has made the podcast, I mean, so much more impactful, I think, and fun.
Absolutely. Okay, so Frank said, because he voted for this one, and I said, oh, tell me more. What happens in your relationship? And he said, well, I'm outgoing and super high energy. She's more laid back and calm energy. There are times when these are mismatched. We can relate to that. Another one, Candace said, he finds challenging conversations life-giving, and I find them exhausting. And also that he's a challenger and I'm an avoider. So that was another one. Jess said, he's more spontaneous and unplanned, and I'm more structured. So, and those were just a few. I mean, again, we received dozens of these, but already as you're listening, start to think, what are some of those differences in your personalities that, yes, you know you love them, but create tension? Because I want those to be at the forefront of your mind to listen to this advice that we're going to give you so that this is impactful. You know, this podcast episode isn't just, oh, that was nice. It actually gives you a different perspective. So you already touched on one of the points, right, about how there's this point where originally you loved something about the other person, you were attracted to it.
Oh, right.
When did you start to resist it? And now this is even more of a mindset perspective is, can you return to seeing those differences as actually what makes you a great team? Like you would not be able to do what you do, create what you create, have your house work the way it does, experience life the way you want to without those differences. Because we can lose sight of that. You know, our mind can go to the place of frustration. Do you think that our differences are what make us a great team?
Oh, yeah. I mean, most people have heard the phrase, you don't want to be in a relationship with yourself. But certainly when it comes to business or when it becomes just being more effective in whatever it is that we're going to do, it's much better suited that we have one that's like planned and thinks something out, one that just takes action, that's decisive, that is more fearless. So it's so much better for us and any couple that you learn to leverage the differences to be a better team rather than you're just now even more limited in the skill sets or the unique abilities that you can tap into for the betterment of the relationship.
Absolutely.
And it makes me think of, you know, so we watched The Last Dance, Michael Jordan's documentary.
So good.
And we always come back to certain teams, right? Whether it's sports, that's easy for me to come up with an analogy for sports, but it could be business. It could be, you know, take that to then parenting or anything that you do, teams. Michael Jordan was great at a lot of things. Most people know him as a prolific scorer, and he also was great at one-on-one defense. But if there was a bunch of people that had the same skill set, were all prolific scorers, that's not going to best suit the team. You need, people like Steve Kerr that are going to be great outside shooters, and that you have Scottie Pippen, right? That was much more bigger, and Dennis Rodman that was huge on defense, right?
Women are like, who are these people? Not all women, some. I didn't know before this documentary who these were, ladies. So don't worry, we'll make this so you understand.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. You have people that have different skill sets, and why they were so great, won 6 championships, was because of how the team was put together and the skill sets.
Yeah.
If you had one person that had one particular skill set and then you just got a bunch of people, it just wouldn't work that way. And so, yes, people say that Bulls team was the greatest because of Michael Jordan. We even saw, and I think Michael Jordan would even say, it wasn't because him, it was also because of the different skill sets that were brought together.
Yes.
So in that, if Michael Jordan tried to get every person on his team to be just like him, it would not have worked. Primarily because those people were not built like him. So take this to your relationship. You can't set out to change your partner to be more like you, But it really is about understanding your personality differences and leveraging them to become the best team you can be.
Well, and I'd also say that you also don't have to sacrifice your needs.
Oh, totally, yeah.
We actually don't use the word sacrifice in our relationship at all. When I see Instagram posts that are about sacrifice is a key to relationship, I'm like, do you want to sacrifice your right leg? You know, that's not...
Yeah. Are you gonna be better functioning with one less leg or one less arm? No.
So sacrifice is not what we believe in personally. So there is a way to have both of your needs met, even when you're different. We're gonna go into that. And one of the first things we wanted to go into was find tools that help you better understand yourself and each other. So a couple that we love, like personality tests, we love assessments. I mean, all the things. We're like, ooh, let's take this one. Let's learn about ourselves. But it's been so key to our journey to not resisting each other and getting to know each other more, finding ways to be more effective with each other. Because if you act and talk exactly how you want to yourself, it may not be effective for your partner. So one is the 4 colors. Mm-hmm. This is one that was interesting. So the 4 colors, Aaron, there's red,
and there's like different color tests out there. So we're going to talk about one in particular, and the acronym is BANK. Mm-hmm. So do you mind if I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So first you have B. So it's actually the blue color, but it stands for blueprint. So it's someone that's more organized and planned.
And they like information.
Yeah, no, that's green.
Oh, it is.
So blue is organized and planning primarily, so that's blue. Okay. A stands for action, which happens to be the color red. So I know you identify more with that one, but it's great because you don't think too much about things. And why I think this is great, and why I love you so much for this, you don't think too much about things, because when you think too much, you talk yourself out, and you usually get yourself into a place of non-action from a place of fear. Mm-hmm. So action is, I don't need a lot of information. I'm gonna go
follow
for
inspiration. It's really about following the inspiration, and it's not even that we don't think through things. It's more so that we trust the impulses and we don't overanalyze it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I think a lot of people who need more data and information and structure and planning, they overanalyze it to make sure it makes sense. Mm-hmm. For my type of person, it's like, oh, that seems like it makes sense. I'm inspired, and it doesn't even mean necessarily that we're unorganized. We just are quicker to take action. So that's A. Then.
So then you have N, stands for nurture, and is the color yellow. So these people are more out for everyone to feel welcomed, everyone to feel accepted. It's more about the emotion. Is everyone feeling happy and joyful and cohesive? And it's really about relationship building.
Yep, absolutely. And then the K.
K is for knowledge, and this is green. So these are the people that are much slower in action taking because they need to research basically everything. So a lot of us, I say us because I did follow an engineering degree earlier on, we look for formulas, we look for steps, we look for processes, and there's a certain level of certainty that we get by being fully researched and then knowing the steps. And then that's when we can make a decision.
Well, even a quick example, wasn't it the vacuum cleaner that you spent like a day researching?
Oh, yeah. Probably more than that.
But here's the thing.
Almost everything I buy, I spend a lot of time researching.
And for me, I'm like, I got no time for that. I am not interested. But here's what we did, right? And this is even a little bit of a sneak peek, but it was like, that's important to you. You do it your way. You know, like, I don't need to interject my opinion or anything. Take the time if that's what you want to be doing. Doesn't mean I have to sit next to you and do the research with you.
Well, yeah, that's so true. So for those of you listening, this is the first point, right, which I'm just going to call awareness. Mm-hmm. Knowing and having the awareness of your differences, which can first be looked at as color. I mean, this is so kind of like step level 1. So you can be blue, you can be red, you can be yellow, or you can be green. Now, where are you at? I.e. the person that are listening. Mm-hmm. And then just at this level, you can see how you can start to use this. And it's so perfect you said this. So I'm a green in this scenario.
And I'm a red.
You're a red. So we don't need to, in the area of, let's say, buying a vacuum or
planning a trip,
certain levels of our business too, planning a trip is a great one. Let me go first. So I do the first legwork. I research, I find the places. You as a red can say, hey, here are some places I thought about. Mm-hmm. So then you give them to me. I research them. And then maybe I come to like the best 3 options. And then I hand it back to you, and then you're like, this one, let's go. Mm-hmm. So that's a perfect way that you can Leverage, let's say a green and a red, is by delegating the time, letting the green research, do everything it needs to feel to have security, to feel like the decision can be made. And then the A just chooses, or the red chooses the last one.
Yeah, and again, take away from this that by knowing more about yourself and each other, you can support each other's process. Neither one of you is more right or more wrong or more frustrating than the other. You just have different ways of going about different things, whether it's about cleanliness around the house, a trip, whether you, a big thing that comes up when we were messaging with people as well was I like to be social. I want to go out and be with friends, and my partner is more shy and wants to stay home. So rather than resisting that you have that difference, it's okay, since my partner is more shy, how could I support their process in feeling more comfortable going to this wedding? You know, what can I do to support them? Is it by telling them a little bit about my friends? You know, it would them understanding a little bit more about the background be able to help them start conversations, you know, because they don't feel like, I don't know anyone here, I'm shy. It's like, oh, she told me he's an engineer, let me talk to him about engineering. Or, oh, I found out he likes sports. So it's like support each other's process. And even to the question, right, where Heather...
I just thought of another one, actually. So in that case, you might also have someone that's a yellow, and they might have more of that social characteristic and trait. And then you might have a green or a blue that's more just kind of organized, and they could end up being more reserved. So they might not have that social dimension as well. A lot of times what happens is they feel left out, because their partner is this, like they could call the socialite, but they're a yellow, they're a nurture. So allow them to do that. But what you could do is when you let them go on their own, when they come back, share with them. So a yellow shares with like the blue, the people they talked to, the great conversations they had, and this can allow them to feel included, not excluded.
Absolutely. Great point. And even I wanted to offer to Heather specifically, since we're answering her question, right? Like, so she's more spontaneous and likes to throw ideas out and expect him to roll with it. So that's definitely more of either like a red / could have some yellow in there, like the nurture. I like to come up with ideas. He, however, likes to think through plans well in advance, maybe even likes a checklist, right? So it could be like blue with a little bit of green in there. Well, you both can support each other's process. And this is even going to the next point, is by having awareness on your specific differences and types, rather than it being just we're different and it creates tension and I wish they were more like me, by knowing, hey, one of the places where we could experience tension is when we are planning a staycation, because I know none of us are planning like international trips right now. So you're planning a staycation in your state. Here's something we might run into because I'm spontaneous. So an example would be, rather than going to the morning and you're now experiencing tension because you're like, oh my gosh, I came up with these plans. You know, let's go ATVing, and then let's go on a hike. And then I found a lunch spot. And the other person's going, oh, this feels so overly planned. Like, can't we just relax and have fun? So rather than now getting into like tension or bickering, feeling resentful about the day, think ahead of time. Think beforehand, before the trip. Hey, love, you know, since we're different and we approach things differently, and this, I feel like I'm spoiling the next tip, but I feel like we can go back and forth a little bit. Pick someone to lead. Okay, everybody write this down. This can be a game changer for this and having both your needs met. Pick someone to lead it. It's the 51-49 principle. So who will take lead on planning that day? Is it the spontaneous person or is it the planned person? That way you don't wake up again that day and have that tension. So an example would be, Aaron's more structured. He might like to know more of a, hey, let's go to this point because that's close to this next stop we could make.
Efficiency is for sure a
Whereas
big thing
I'm
for
like,
me.
let's see how we feel. What if in the morning we're feeling more like moving, in the afternoon? Anyway, we would plan ahead who's going to kind of run that day so that there isn't a power struggle. And Aaron, do you remember when we went camping with my parents? In Colorado?
This is a great
I know they
reminder.
wouldn't mind me sharing this.
Yeah, and they listen, so shout out to Jocelyn's parents. Let me underscore something with that really quick, because this is the key. We were talking about this first point being awareness. We're kind of on the second point here of designating someone to be like the owner of that area, like at 51-49. tension and frustration comes up when you're trying to get the partner to be more like you because your needs aren't being met or it's not fitting how you wanted to do it. So this is how you depersonalize it. You realize that, it's not like Jocelyn in this case. It's like, those are your red tendencies. So just start to see the behaviors of your partner from their base personality, like a red, a green, and that takes the personal out of it. Without that, going to your example, and your parents have done, a wonderful job of bringing more awareness in this area, but we went camping in Denver, and you could see, they're both experienced campers.
Straight up power struggle.
Thankfully for us, because we are not experienced. We're the opposite of that, which is great for actually a better way to leverage it because we knew nothing. They handled all of it, and that was so great for us, setting up the tent, getting the cookware out, setting up the campsite. And that worked well for us because we just allowed him to be in there sort of red. But when it came to both of them, it was like, you didn't set the tent up like I wanted to.
Right.
Why did you get the cookware out when we should have been getting the sleeping bags out first?
Right.
Or like when we ate food, it's like, you didn't clean the dish,
exactly.
the bowl or the spoon like this.
Right.
So they had a lot of tension during that because their behaviors and actions were in conflict to how the other one wanted it to do.
Right.
Back to this point, 5149, they could have designated one person to be the majority owner, where you're still both having decisions and you're both supplying, your side of what you think, how this should go. But when you get to the point of tension, the person that has the 51% ownership says, we're just going to go with it like this.
Yep.
And then you can just allow it okay, this is your area.
Well, and some of you might be listening going, okay, that's nice in theory, but I'm stubborn or my partner is stubborn. Well, would you rather be stubborn or would you rather have a good time? Just really check it out because you can either be attached to your perspective and the way you want it, or you could just be more free flowing because here's the thing, at the end of your life, are you going to be like, I am so happy that we wasted our energy disagreeing about the way we loaded the dishwasher? No, you won't. So don't waste your energy on these smaller things about your differences. Just come up with simple systems and kind of set aside your ego. Be like, you know what? All right, we designated. You're the 51. So you have more to say. You take the lead. And that way, maybe you can even experience things a little bit differently. Going back to the camping scenario, maybe you could relax a little bit more because your partner is taking the lead. Or when it comes to planning a trip, maybe you get to experience that you get to be more structured and you don't have to be annoyed because your partner's more spontaneous. It takes the friction out by having this 51 lead. This has made such a difference in our relationship.
The important thing here is one partner might feel like they don't get to make decisions then, right? So it's important then if you have a 51-49 that you have your own area where you're the 51.
Yep.
So in this case, let's say your parents designated your dad to be probably Nicole. I think your dad probably could have had a better time if he just let it all go and let Nicole be the 51 for the camping site and camping there where your dad could have been the 51 on getting us to the place, navigating the directions. Right. And this leads us into the next point, I think. So point number 3 is what are the areas of your relationship you can break down to determine who has 51 and who has 49 in each area. So this would be like a leisure activity, or you could label it as camping.
Yeah.
But you have areas like parenting, intimacy, professional. You have these other areas of your life, maybe the home area. Designate based on the categories of your relationship this way on who's going to be 51 and who's going to be 49, and then make sure that they are diverse, they're balanced.
Yeah.
One of you has 4 areas, another person has, 3 or 4 areas.
Yeah, I wanted to even take that to going back to Candace, her message, and how she talked about how he loves the challenging conversations, whatever that topic is, and she finds that exhausting. She talked a little bit about the challenges because she feels overwhelmed with parenting and profession, and by the end of the day, she doesn't want to have these challenging conversations. Well, you don't have to sacrifice yourselves. It doesn't have to be we never have challenging conversations or we always. Again, we always believe there's a win-win solution. So to have both your needs met, what if you said, hey, love, I know you really enjoy challenging conversations and there's a lot going on politically and there's a lot going on in our economy and you might want to be talking about those. For me, at the end of the day, I don't have the energy for that. So could we talk about that like Sunday mornings. You know, could we have coffee together and talk through those things? And it's in a container where it's happening. And so I think it comes back to the power of communication. You can't have both your needs met if you're walking around with expectations and not talking about it. Like we almost, it's not even like this is true.
One thing I want to bring up really quick, it's a great place to just talk about the assessment that we do really quick because, you know, we talked about level 1 was like bringing awareness, was about the colors, but we do an assessment that's super powerful that goes beyond the individual personality into the personality of the relationship and how your traits play into each other, where we have this assessment where you actually find out things like your relationship dynamics on 4 dimensions. Not to get into too much detail, but we do love it. You know, you have your level of assertiveness, you have your self-confidence, you have something called avoidance and partner dominance, as well as you have your base personalities, which is another acronym called SCOPE, right? Like your social, your change, your organized, pleasing, and emotionally steady dimensions. And it's really powerful to start to see how that plays into your relationship. So I know I've been talking, but you want to talk about that assessment and how people could really access that.
Well, it is a great tool because the others that we have mentioned and that we've taken are so focused on the individual. And it is great to learn about yourself, but there's very few tools that go into your relationship. Like, how do you two work better together? So to take the relationship assessment is actually part of several of the courses that we offer, whether it's our home-based workshop. We have a full relationship course. So actually the best way to find out about the assessment is to join our next book club, which is starting next week. Well, we started the advertising for it, but it's starting next week. And we're doing challenges, connection challenges, gratitude challenges, 3 free workshops. You guys, we're going into conflict resolution, communication, and emotional triggers. Those are free. And we teach you deep into those. So go to thenewpowercouple.com and join that. It's starting mid-July. And in that group, you're going to hear about the assessment. You're going to hear about how to take that. And
I don't know if you mentioned. So when you go to newpowercouple.com, you're getting our book for free.
Good point.
So what we do is we give the book for free. We do ask you just pay shipping. And from doing that, then you can get access into the book club. And we do that because couples in there have the book. We read it. We read other books. So it kind of keeps this integrity. It keeps this momentum and progress within the group. So we're not excluding anybody, hence why we give the book away for free. But everyone in that group does need to have the book so that we're all on the same page together.
Great point. And if you're listening and you have been in the book club, I know there's many OG listeners in here, and you're like, okay, I've been in the book club. I didn't take the relationship assessment yet. Send us a message. Say, hey, how do I take that relationship assessment again? We'll tell you about that. I'm telling you, every single couple in the world has to take this assessment. It's an absolute game changer. It's going to save you so much time and energy learning about each other and how to work better together.
It's literally the best thing you could do, especially if you were preparing for marriage, to actually get on the same page. Because look, though you might feel that you have not only things in common, but your actual differences are things that attract you and excite you, I promise you, promise you, at some point, no matter what stage you're in, you get to the point where these differences do feel like tensions. And it's because, and even to summarize the podcast, you don't have the awareness of what your differences are. That was really kind of number 1. Number 2, you're not out to try to then change your partner, but how do you leverage these differences so that you become a better team together? And you can look at that, first of all, even from like a color perspective. But then you also look at the areas that make up your relationship, and then designate someone to be a 51% owner and then a 49% owner of these areas, and then make sure they're balanced so that your decision making is also balanced.
Yeah, and I just would say for one more recap point is, remember there's always a win-win solution. Erase the word sacrifice from your relationship. To have both of your needs met, it just takes proactive communication. It takes anticipating what might be coming up as a challenge or a frustration because of your differences, and then talk about it proactively. Hey, I know you operate this way. I operate this way. This is coming up. Who's going to take lead on this? What can we anticipate so that both of us have our needs? Come up with win-win solutions so that you don't feel resentment, you don't feel tension, you don't feel like you're having to sacrifice yourself. And if you're wanting even more detail on this, we're going to answer more questions. Like, we answer everything in the DM. So if you're like, hey, I listened to that podcast episode. I have this specific nuance. What could I do? What's a win-win solution here? Send us a message. We respond to every single message that we have.
Yeah.
We receive.
Well, I think it'd be good to look at maybe one more person's question and let's like directly answer
it.
theirs.
I love that.
But as you look, I wanted to open up this conversation because this really hit me this week as we were contemplating on this topic.
Yeah.
We also have a couple that's getting married at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges was, as well as for many couples we talked to, I have to be honest about that, there gets to be this season where you feel like you're losing your identity. That there was a way in which things worked for you as a single person, which might have to do with a lot of the questions that we got, like I'm organized or I'm spontaneous and my partner is not that way. So you feel like the relationship is starting to dumb down your expression of your authentic self.
Or not even dumb down, but more so just like have to change yourself.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to say about that. And I'm just putting this out there as my opinion. You have to be willing to adjust your personality in a sense. But think of your personality, or what most will call your ego, as like a role that you play in a play. Like maybe you're in Peter Pan, right? So you play the role of Peter Pan, or I forget the characters, Hook.
Isn't there Captain Hook? Yeah.
You have to remember that role, you could play another role. And your personality should be seen and gets to be seen as you get to take on the traits that you want to next for a new expression of yourself, to have your partner see you as different, or to move your relationship into another level of evolving, of connection. And that takes being a different person. It takes playing a different role. Now, this is always happening under the surface. The most natural thing in the universe is a certain level of evolution. And you look outside and you see that. And it's your resistance to things changing or just evolving to become better that has you feel that tension. So you have to be willing, because look, you've evolved your physical body for how many years? You've been a baby, you've been a teen, you've been a young adult, you've been, in your 30s or 40s,
yep.
You've matured up. So your body, you've always been a different person. But at some point you try to latch on to this identity, this personality, and that being so fixed.
Yeah, good point.
The reason I say that is your personality serves you in different seasons. So your personality served you as a single person, or for many of the couples, as a single parent. You had to take on certain roles and you had to be a certain way. Maybe you had to be more structured and more blue and more blueprint.
Yeah.
For the safety and security of your kids. Yes, but now you enter in with a partner in your relationship. You have to see yourself as adjusting.
Yeah.
That personality is not fixed. So you have to let go of the parts that worked for you as a single person and say, what now do I get to be? Who do I get to become? What new personality traits do I get to embody? What new role do I want to play that feels great?
And that works for the relationship.
That works for a relationship. That better serves the relationship. Yeah. And my natural tendencies as well to serve the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be open to that adjusting of playing a different role. And again, to not just see yourself as what's best for me, but what is best for the relationship. And then you get to use your traits that do best serve the relationship.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect, so Jess, to her question, because she was talking about how he's more spontaneous and unplanned, she's more structured and likes to know what to anticipate. And what she shared was about parenting. So they actually have a blended family. And she was talking about how his style of parenting is, again, much more like, oh, after school, what do you want to do? Okay, let's go here. Let's go here.
How that's fun.
Right. Whereas she's like, no, like there's a structure. And she didn't sit, I'm putting words in her mouth a little bit, but I would imagine it's like she wants the kids to do homework first. Then there's snack. Then there's play, right? And so there could be this tension of, hey, I'm not really loving the way you're parenting like my children and vice versa. And so to Jess and to everyone, again, go back to, what is a win-win solution here? By understanding that we have our differences and neither one of us is more right than the other, how can we create a win-win solution? Here's an example. It could be on Fridays, it's spontaneous day. So it's after school. What do you feel like doing? And the spontaneous parent gets to kind of take the lead on that. You want to go to the zoo? All right, you want ice cream? And then the other days are more structured, and it's the plan, right? Because maybe their kids thrive more with structure. Another example could be about time blocking. It could be, hey, all right, from 4 to 6 is spontaneous, but then 6 to 8 is very structured.
I like that, yeah.
So there is a win-win solution to all of it where both of your needs are met, and it just takes anticipating it, having honest communication about it, overly communicate, like go into the detail, because otherwise you hear us talk about this in different ways, you guys, but otherwise you walk around with expectations, and when your expectations aren't met, you're disappointed. They can't read your mind. So if you're feeling like your need isn't being met because of your differences, talk about it and then come up with a win-win solution.
Yeah.
Anything more you'd add to Jess's question?
Well, no, it just reminds me of the longer point that I just went on. A lot of these questions I did feel, and I'm not saying this is the case for people because I haven't talked to them. That's the only way you know what's actually true for somebody is if you ask them and then listen. I think that's a powerful, with all the things we have going on in society today. But primarily that you have to see yourself as evolving. You have to see yourself as always becoming a better version of yourself. And you can't be so stuck with, this is me, this is how I do things, because that's probably, number one, just what you're comfortable with. And ask yourself, is just because you're comfortable with something, is that what's going to serve you next? Is that what's going to serve the relationship? Is that going to serve your kids as they get older? It's probably not. Your kids, love from 0 to like 8, love the play. They probably love the parent that's very spontaneous and action-oriented. You could even say they need a little bit of structure. So we don't have kids, so maybe that wasn't the best analogy. But at a certain level, even kids need parents to be different.
Yes.
And they need a sense of security. They need structure. They also need play and spontaneous. And they also need a certain level of teaching. So from that perspective, even your kids need you to express your differences in a way, and then also your partner.
Yeah.
So that benefits your kids for you to leverage your differences as well. So you have to just open up this idea of it has to be the way that you've always been. And think of yourself as a team and developing the skills to better serve the team as you get into the next season.
I even just got something new. So this podcast title, right, about having both your needs met with these differences is not only your individual needs, but just the needs of the relationship. You talk about leveling up your identity to not just thinking as a you. You talked about how your traits served you as a single person. And then your relationship starts to desire different things from you.
Oh, great way to say it.
So actually look at your relationship as this separate entity and go, what does our relationship need? And do my actions and my preferences and my personality traits serve what the relationship needs? I think we should just even leave it right there.
That was pretty good, yeah.
So we said a lot there. I think people could extract several points. And when you're listening to this, don't just go, that was a nice podcast. I really took... What is one thing that you can take away and implement? Whether it was something more about the mindset and the way you're looking at these differences.
Leveraging to be a team.
Or the split, 51-49. Or is it about looking at yourself as evolving? And maybe you've been a little bit stuck on the way you want to do things. So pick one, put it into your relationship, watch the magic unfold, send us messages. How is it making a difference? What stood out to you? Just so you know, we do a drawing every single month. So we did it last week. We'll be doing it at the end of July. And we put your names in for all reviews. So please go review, like write one. Don't just do the stars, like 5 stars. Write a message. That makes such a difference for us to reach more people. We also put names in the drawing for people who share about it on your Instagram and your stories. Send it to a friend and you send us a screenshot. Or if you send us a question that we cover on the podcast. So get your name in there. We do a drawing at the end of the month. It means so much that you're, communicating with us. Like I said, we respond to every message. Any final notes that you want to say?
Well, I was going to see, do you want to say the thing that you wanted to say?
Oh gosh, which one? I don't remember.
I was just saying if you remembered. So from our last podcast, we had a couple of realizations.
Oh.
I
think we should save that for next one.
But I don't want people to be like, oh, what were they going to say?
Okay.
If you're listening to this and you're excited and say, oh, this is exactly what my partner needs to hear, guess what? They're not the ones listening. So who we're talking to is you. We're talking to you, the person that is listening now. So first, just look for yourself. Look where you can implement this. A lot of times we talk about leading by example. You have mirror neurons. When you start to change your behavior and actions, your partner will start to model them. So don't start listening to this podcast like, oh, the Freemans are talking about what my partner needs. This is for them. Hey, will you listen to this podcast? This is for you. No, this is for you listening.
Yes.
And of course, as you embody, feel free to share with your partner and have them
Yes.
listen so that you can come together as a team. But we are listening. Actually, we are speaking to you,
Yes.
the person listening.
Good. So you, the one listening, we're talking to you. All right, everyone. It's been so great to connect with you. We can't wait to talk to you on the next episode.